guys, today we're going to be talking about equilibrium in economics, when supply equals demand. Before we jump into what equilibrium is though, let's take a closer look at what even is supply and demand. So demand is represented by a demand curve, and that's a curve that is downward sloping and depicts the quantity of an item demanded by consumers at a given price. In particular, it's the sum of the quantity demanded by each consumer when we're talking about market demand, which is what we're going to be kind of looking at in the context of equilibrium. That's represented by a curve that looks something like this. Moving on to supply, it's kind of the same thing, except instead of consumers, we're going to be looking at sellers. And so once again, we're going to be looking at market supply, which is the sum of the quantity supplied by each seller. That would be represented by a curve that looks something like this. It's notably positively sloping, unlike the demand curve. Now, when we mix those two together, we get something that looks like this. And you'll notice there's a point of intersection, and that is our point of equilibrium. So what exactly does that mean? Let's look into that. So equilibrium means there's a buyer for every seller because supply and demand are equivalent to one another. This can also be perceived as when the curves intersect on a graph. And typically, equilibrium means there's no need for a price to change, but sometimes there is things that occur that makes that price shift. So when that price shifts, what does that look like? Sometimes when the price is below the point of equilibrium, we can get shortages. That means there's not enough supply to match the demand. And when the price is above the point of equilibrium, we can get a surplus. So that would mean that there's not enough demand to match every supply. That's supplied for, sorry. Now, let's put this concept into action. Not surplus and shortages per se, but the concept of equilibrium itself. So, if you saw my last video, I talked about how I like matcha lattes. Something I've noticed is that for the last little while, maybe say at least the last year or so, my matcha from Starbucks has costed me about, the same price. This, depicts or indicates that a point of equilibrium has been reached with the price of this matcha latte. That means with this price, there's enough matcha supplied for every person demanding it. Yeah, those are my sources. I hope, you learned something about equilibrium today. If not, I hope you understood it. Have a great day.